This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Imagine being the first person to ever send a payment over the internet. New things can be scary, and crypto is no different. It's new, but like the internet, it's also revolutionary. Making your first crypto trade feels easy with 24/7 support when you need it. Go to Kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures Inc. PVI DBA Kraken. Visit PVI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
Hello, it's Gareth. This is the Somewhere on Earth Global Technology Podcast for Tuesday, the 10th of December 2024. We're in London and we are part of the splendid evergreen podcast community. Check out our and indeed their website. Yeah, folks, it is the Ania and Gareth show again today. Hello, Ania. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Gareth?
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Although, from a tech point of view, mildly worried because the fibre optic cable coming into my house, I can see it now through the window. It's been kind of tacked onto a very small, very kind of low brick wall. And the wall is kind of collapsing a little bit. It's crumbling, and I've got a horrible feeling it's going to take the fibre optic cable. And it was slightly in my mind. Now, this is very trivial, I know, compared to what we're talking about later in the programme, which is indeed the really big submarine fibre optic cables. But at least you can't accuse me of being off topic on this one, Ania.
Well, funny you should say about problems and fears about cabling. Ours are all very, very shallow. And the problem we have in our tiny, tiny, tiny little front garden patch of earth that we have is that we have to be careful what we plant for the roots and also what we dig, because one time my husband did some wonderful weeding and then we had a gas leak because he'd pissed the gas pipe.
Oh no.
So yeah, we have to be incredibly careful with that because it's very, very shallow.
Oh, watch it. Just put gravel down and then have pot plants, I think. No more digging.
No more digging.
That's my solution. All right, let's crack on with the show. And coming up today, safeguarding the internet as a global body launches to improve the resilience of the submarine fibre optic cables that crisscross our planet. When the cables snap or get damaged, the internet, of course, can go dark or at least get very slow for millions of people at a time. We'll find out about this new body and why it's taken so long to found such an entity. Also, a company that not only encrypts your data end-to-end, but never has access to the data itself. So that means the data can't be ransomed during cyber attacks, and it can't be sold onto third parties. It's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. So they carry 99% of the world's internet traffic, they frequently get damaged, and they are crucial infrastructure. Yes, submarine fibre optic cables. So thank goodness there's a joined up body dedicated to maintaining the resilience of these vital cables. Well, actually, such a body has only just come into existence, and I must admit, I was rather surprised we didn't already have such a thing. But now, finally, step forward the International Advisory Body for Submarine Cable Resilience, jointly established by the UN's Agency for Digital Technologies, that's the ITU, and another organisation called the International Cable Protection Committee. So I hope you've noted all those organisations and acronyms there, but you get the idea. Now, this new advisory body was launched at the end of November, brandishing a press release promising to, in their words, address ways to improve cable resilience by promoting best practices for governments and industry players to ensure the timely deployment and repair of submarine cables, reduce the risks of damage, and enhance the continuity of communications over the cables. And I love that statement because I think it's quite an understatement. Really, what they're trying to say is that we're effectively doing everything we can to protect the internet that billions of people around the world rely on. I think if I was writing that press release, I might have gone with something a bit more grabby, a bit like that, because that is essentially what they're doing. Well, thank goodness then that this thing now exists. And as I mentioned, I was quite surprised that we didn't have such a thing already. Ania's been looking into this as well. Ania, were you surprised it's taken until now to have somebody that's going to oversee all this?
Well, yes, me too, Gareth, because I get all of the press releases that are fired out by the International Telecommunications Union and the UN Agency for Digital Technology. And I was really surprised when I was bombarded by them. And that I had to reread it twice. And it's like, you're kidding me. We haven't had like an international group of people who are responsible for this, who can help in these situations. To remind our listeners, the submarine cables carry most of the world's internet traffic, and so therefore, they enable the critical services across the globe: commerce, finance transactions, government activities, digital health, education. The list, can carry on and on and on. Now, the ITU's Secretary General Doreen Bogdan-Martin said submarine cables carry over 99% of international data exchanges, making their resilience a global imperative, which sounds quite obvious to me in some ways. Well, as of 2024, it's estimated that there are over 500 active and planned submarine cable systems connecting various continents, markets, and homes around the world. Now, these advanced cables are engineered to carry enormous amounts of data efficiently over long distances. Otherwise, the internet would be really slow, of course. So they have an outer protective layer which safeguards against deep sea pressure, because some of them obviously are very, very deep on the seafloor, corrosion and marine activity. The inner fibre strands are fine-tuned for rapid data transmission with minimal signal degradation. Now, this network, as I said, is so crucial for those financial trading, for video calls, for recording the Somewhere on Earth Global podcast, Gareth. We couldn't do this if it wasn't for that, really.
Is that why they've set it up? Are they a bit worried about us going
I think
dark,
they must
really?
be. I think
It's
they
all
must
about
be.
us.
So whenever we have guests from outside the UK, that's what's happening. The journey from design to operational status for a submarine cable now, that can take more than 2 years. So this is because of several factors. So it is securing the finance, obviously, to make sure you have enough money to pay for it, navigating through permitting and regulatory processes, meeting environmental and operational standards. So imagine, you are going through international waters, you're going through country borders because you're coming into a particular country. So there's a lot of red tape, literally. So various challenges can arise from the conditions of the seafloor and weather patterns. So there is a huge need for coordination with multiple regulatory agencies across different regions.
And it goes to show that at a very high level, at UN level, they're especially worried about you digging through your fibre optic cable in your garden as well. So it's really clearly at the top of the international agenda.
It is.
In all seriousness, apart from maybe the risk of a mishap in your front garden, how often do the proper submarine intercontinental cables, how often do they get damaged?
Well, they think there's about 150 to 200 incidents are reported worldwide each year. So that's 3 cable repairs a week, approximately. So that's what the International Cable Protection Committee say. Main culprits behind these damages are usually accidental human activities, fishing, anchoring, obviously, natural events though too, wear and tear, and equipment malfunctions. Things can go wrong with the kit. Now, obviously, our lovely subscribers probably remember that 2 undersea fibre optic cables in the Baltic Sea, one connecting Finland and Germany, were cut recently, prompting concerns of possible sabotage, according to statements from involved countries and companies. So this incident brings to mind previous investigations into similar occurrences in the area, including damage to a gas pipeline and undersea cables last year, as well as the 22 explosions of the Nord Stream gas pipelines.
So we have this new body, thank goodness. Who is part of this body?
There are 40 members, ministers, heads of regulatory authorities, industry leaders, senior specialists in telecommunication, cable operations, the who is who in this world. Its members represent various regions around the globe, particularly those where the livelihoods and digital futures of people rely heavily on submarine telecommunications cables, as well as those who are involved in the deployment, maintenance and protection of this crucial infrastructure. So the body is co-chaired by His Excellency Minister Bosun Tijani, Nigeria's Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, and Professor Sandra Maximiano, Chair of the Board of Directors of Portugal's National Communications Authority. And they have their first planned Resilience Summit in Nigeria in early 2025.
And not a moment too soon. Really encouraging that there's this body existing there. Ania, thank you very much indeed for that.
Imagine being the first person to ever send a payment over the internet. New things can be scary, and crypto is no different. It's new, but like the internet, it's also revolutionary. Making your first crypto trade feels easy with 24/7 support when you need it. Go to kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures Inc. PVI DBA Kraken. Visit PVI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
Well, going to move on to a different topic now. Back in July, the tech company Proton launched a free VPN network of dedicated anti-censorship servers in Venezuela a week before the presidential elections. The company saw its VPN sign-ups soar by 4,000% following the elections and was the most downloaded in the Venezuelan Android App Store. Back in May, Proton's Antonio Cesarano was on Somewhere on Earth and told us how they were providing a free VPN service in 60 countries with upcoming elections.
We're providing a number of paid VPN connections and servers for free to people that are going through elections. So we have the whole calendar of elections happening around the world, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. 50% of the population of the world is going through the polls this year, and this means that there's going to be a huge amount of people in a short amount of time connecting to our service because they want to make sure that they have access to the unfiltered internet. And in order to better support these people, we are making sure that they get the most support that we can give them.
So that was Antonio Cesarano talking to this podcast back in May. Now, over at the Web Summit recently, Ania caught up with CEO and founder of Proton, Andy Yen.
Well, Proton VPN, it's kind of funny because I always joke that in the ideal world, it wouldn't need to exist. But unfortunately, we don't live in the ideal world. And as you know, Proton VPN is a service that is often used first whenever there is a situation when democracy or freedom is under attack. I wish I could tell you the usage has gone down, but it hasn't. It's gone up dramatically just this year. In fact, if you go online and look for the Proton VPN Internet Freedom Observatory, we have a site that tracks this. And I was on there yesterday looking at, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. And you just see the number of, usage spikes exponentially increasing. And we track it there. It's all public. It's because we publish everything there. And what you see is that this year was really an unprecedented year in terms of the number of countries that had internet shutdowns, attack on internet freedom, and as a result of that, giant rushes of people into using, Proton VPN. So, of course, there's a well-known case of Venezuela. They had an election, kind of a fraudulent election, let's say. And as a result of that, when the government tried to censor the results, we became number one in the App Store and the Play Store, in Venezuela. Then, of course, same thing happened in a dozen other countries. Recently, we saw some activity in Mauritius and a few other countries in Africa. So it's, I think, whenever there's a coup or an election happening in Africa, we actually find out in our data before the BBC does. And that, I think, shows how direct the connection is between VPN, freedom, and democracy.
Absolutely, and we've reported on Mauritius, on Mozambique very recently, and it's certainly VPNs are certainly somewhere where people turn to if they can, because if the mobile internet's off, it's so difficult to get in touch. But Proton is not a one-trick pony. You've got much more there, haven't you? And one product that you've launched is your Proton Docs, and that's secure end-to-end. So tell me how that works.
Yeah, Proton Docs was something that we pushed out because in the early days, Proton's users were mostly activists and journalists. Today, it's, of course, a much broader audience. There's over actually 100 million people who are on our various services. So this is not just a VPN, because we're, of course, in Mozambique and Mauritius, we're famous for that. Actually, I think I saw a number somewhere. At one point, 7% of the country was connected to Proton VPN, which is kind of probably our highest penetration of any country out so far, right? And for that to happen in Africa, it kind of blows your mind, but that's how the globalized world works. But of course, we also have Proton Mail. It's a very well-known end-to-end encrypted email service. It's basically like Gmail without the creepy business model, right? Gmail without spying on you. Another product we launched was also Proton Docs. Proton Docs is actually part of Proton Drive, and Proton Drive is an encrypted file sharing service. So if you want to share sensitive files or keep your files safe, you put it on Proton Drive. And obviously, a lot of the files that people put on their online file storage is actually documents. And this is something that came from a lot of journalists and activists who were using Proton, and they basically said, look, we have a lot of sensitive communications that we're doing. We're writing reports about whether maybe it's investigative journalists, maybe I'm reporting on big tech, maybe I'm reporting on government somewhere, and I'm doing that today. They're doing that today on Google Docs. And Google, as you know, is an American tech company. It can be subpoenaed very easily. Governments can get into it, right? And now it's kind of interesting in the U.S. because they just had their election. The government now is, President Trump. And now you may not be comfortable with President Trump having access to the U.S. Department of Justice, everything you have on Google, right? So obviously a lot of journalists are a little bit concerned about that. And they decided to come over to actually Proton Docs product because it's a way for you to collaborate, work on articles together, work with your sources, edit and collaborate in real time in a documents product, very much like Google Docs, but with end-to-end encryption. And that means that, first of all, we're a Swiss company, so if the Americans come knocking, they're not going to get it by default, right? But also, even if we wanted to give up the information of the journalists and activists who are using Proton Docs, we couldn't, because encryption means that we ourselves don't have access to that data, and that I think is the best possible protection, right? Because we can have protection where it's like, oh, I promise I won't look, I promise I won't give you up, but that's not very effective. I much prefer to trust in the laws of mathematics, because it doesn't matter who wins the election, the laws of math are not going to change.
So basically, if I was to put a document on Proton Docs, the only person who could read it was the person I shared it with. You wouldn't have any access to it as the company.
Yeah, that's correct. So we would be unable to read it. It's just you and whoever you give access to. And that's actually the best because it's also better from a security standpoint. Today we see so many hacks, we see so many cyber attacks, even big tech companies are getting breached, right? And what I tell people is, look, a hacker cannot steal from me something that I myself do not possess. And that's actually the best mathematical guarantee of security you can actually get.
What's the take-up like on it?
Well, I told the story not very often because it's a bit embarrassing, but since we're past it now, I can say it. The first day that we launched it, actually it fell over for half an hour in the evening because there were so many people coming onto the platform all on day one, which is much bigger than we anticipated actually. So I think we've seen very good uptake on that. I think it's still not reached its full potential, obviously. There's a lot more users that today, I think a lot of folks don't know about it, right? In fact, I would say most of your listeners probably haven't heard about this. This is the first time they're hearing about it. So I think we'll get a lot more growth in years to come. But it's actually been something that we've been quite pleased with. And it's something that I'm keen to get out there, more. And what's nice is it's completely free of charge. We're not monetizing it. You can get a free Proton account, use Proton Drive. You can store up to 5 gigs of documents for free, and that's a lot of documents, right? And the Docs product is also completely free as well. And that's because Proton, we're not a profit-driven company. Actually, our biggest shareholder is a nonprofit. So it's really about making these technologies accessible to the world, as opposed to trying to find ways to monetize it.
So clearly lots going on at Proton VPN, and Ania was rather interested in their business model in the sense that, for instance, they're not selling data to third parties. So how do they make money?
Proton, we decided to do a completely radically different model. The way that we did it was we said, okay, no advertising, because that's a conflict of interest. So the business model is actually freemium. 99% of our users use the service for free, and 1% may pay extra for some value-added services. So Scribe is one example of that, right? Scribe is not it's not a free service. It can't be free because the computing cost is quite high to do AI. But if you wanted to pay, for the cost of one coffee per month, that's the cost of what Proton's, free services, paid services cost. You could actually get Proton Scribe and a bunch of other features as well, right? And I think online we have to make a choice. And today, we tend to think about services and internet as being free, but it's not really free, right? There's also such thing as a free lunch, and when it comes to the digital world, that is very, very true. You're not getting Google or Gmail for free. You're paying. You're paying with your most intimate, sensitive, private, confidential communications. And the things that you hold most dear. You're paying with your family photos, your conversations with your loved ones. And I think more and more people are going to start thinking, well, if I'm going to have to pay anyways, maybe I'd rather pay the price of one coffee per month, but have the certainty that my data can never be abused or misused or just stolen from me, as opposed to going down the existing free path of letting Google keep doing what it wants to do with your data. And it's tricky because getting people to pay is also difficult. But I do think that we now see sort of a shift in society where more people say, well, given the choice between paying a coffee per month versus the alternative, which is losing control of all my digital data, I'd rather pay that coffee per month.
Well, we ask people to give us a coffee, don't we, Ania?
We do. Please do buy us a coffee.
Buy us a coffee.
Buy us a coffee.
Exactly.
And a huge thank you, because 2 listeners have brought us 5 coffees each recently. So we're very grateful for that. Just quickly, Andy M mentioned Proton Scribe in that. And now that is a tool that can respond to your emails. Can you imagine? It is absolutely my dream. And it uses AI, obviously, but not in the way you think. So we're going to have more on that in the podcast subscription extra.
Oh, how can people subscribe though? That's the thing.
They can go to a website called pod.fan. I've also put it up on our socials where you can find us. So please look on there. And there should be a link through on the how to subscribe. It should take you through on our website.
Thank you for that, Ania. So we digress. Important digression, though. So back to the good old Proton VPN then. So because they have this observatory, don't they, Ania? So they're very good on looking into censorship and getting a whole load of analytics and data around that. So what did you find out from Andy and the people at Proton?
Well, it's quite interesting, some of the data that they have found. So, they were looking very much at elections so far this year, and they looked at Senegal and Turkey. Turkey made a move to block VPNs to try and control the flow of information. Senegal also switched the internet off in response to protests after the elections were postponed indefinitely towards the start of the year.
But accessing VPNs, that can be quite tricky for people in some places, can't it? And, it can actually make you conspicuous if you're not careful.
Yeah, we talked about the stealth protocol before on the show with Proton. But now what they've done is they have a discrete icon to hide your VPN app in case there are spot checks. So there would be no suggestion at all that you are using a VPN if you were using theirs.
All right, Ania, thank you. Now, just before we go, dear listener, we do still want your suggestions for items or interviews that really stood out to you from a year in podcasting in 2024. We've had some feedback already. The Jimmy Wales interview went down well, for instance. French language chatbots. And also, remember we did something about Wikidata becoming more human readable. So those are a few, but now that I've mentioned that doesn't mean, dear listener, that you cannot mention those. You can agree with those or say, yes, but what about this or what about that? For instance, you may say, how about that Bristol-based robotics researcher, Dr. George Jenkinson? Remember him? He developed a Braille pen for blind and visually impaired users. And this pen has a soft tip, and you simply trace the pen along the dimples that form the Braille characters. Here's a clip.
The tip of this tactile sensor is made of silicone rubber, so that's a soft, squishy rubber that's soft to the touch. And the way that this sensor works on a kind of fundamental level is that there are areas within that rubber that are filled with liquid. And as the liquid area comes into contact with something, the rubber compresses and the liquid behind it moves. And we can film that using a camera. I have explored other means of sensing, but the most basic form and most successful and easy to implement way that I've been doing it is by using a camera to watch how this liquid moves. And then using computer vision algorithms, we can work backwards and say, okay, if this liquid here is moving, then that means that this particular area on this soft rubber membrane must be being touched right now. So we can basically, what I've done with this piece of work is miniaturize that so that the areas that the movement in the liquid corresponds to is actually a little bit smaller than a braille bump, so that when we pass this over some braille text, we can see with quite good resolution where the bumps on the paper or cardboard or perhaps metal or wherever the braille is embossed, where those bumps actually are.
And then as you trace the pen across, the computer builds up a picture of the bumps and how they relate to each other, so it kind of maps them, and then it can work out what the characters are. And then that data can be used in all kinds of ways, for instance, being converted from text to voice, so the pen effectively becomes an enunciating braille reader. So perhaps you want to suggest that one, or you might remember, this was quite recently actually, our long-term listener Patricia joined us, Patricia Reichel, and tell us how she and her co-writer Beth Jackson had self-published a novel which was originally written as a draft manuscript by Patricia's father, now late father, Robert Dodd, and he did it on one of those old Osborne computers back in the days, quite a long time ago. And what Patricia did was she revived this novel, which was a unique perspective on agriculture in Vietnam during the war. And it was based on her father's work and travels at the time. So Patricia revives it, manages to get the manuscripts that had originally been typed out on that old computer. And anyway, she came to the Somewhere on Earth studio and gave us her tips on how to get self-published.
I think, first of all, I did not imagine the end result, and maybe that's a bad idea, but I think it would have put me off if I thought I want a hardcover, I want a paperback, I want an ebook, I want an audiobook. I would have thought, you've gone mad, stop it, just keep the goals small and simple. I started off with just wanting a PDF, a little bit lacking in confidence, and we had to start off taking this pile of papers, and it wasn't digital. The Osborne computer, I don't know what happened to it. We think it just got chucked out or, recycled. I don't know. But we didn't have any digital file. It was only this paper copy.
So you had to just type it all in?
Well, we tried doing optical character recognition, software that basically takes an image and converts the text. We tried doing that. We tried Google Docs, where you can scan something and plonk that picture in. But it did weird things with our dot matrix print. It took little chunks, sort of circles, and put them in different places. And I said, this is awful. It's doing something really weird with our documents. So we decided we would do dictation to help. And then actually, we're both quite fast typists. And there's something just quite relaxing, particularly when you're not thinking about it and you're just tickling the keyboard here. And we had the two of us working on it. Beth lives in Arizona. So sometimes with the time zone difference, it was quite handy because we just would go to the end of the document, whoever was around, she's 8 hours ahead. It meant that we were often working on this project.
Behind, I think, isn't it? In America, did you say?
So, or behind, I'm sorry,
yeah,
8 hours behind.
So you'd finish at, I'd say, midnight or something, and then
she'd pick it back
that
up.
Would be her evening's work.
We'd have a little bit of overlap, but the typing had to happen, and we that's what we did.
And eventually ended up with a hardback and a paperback book and you name it, even an audiobook. So an incredible example of listener Patricia, who just came up with this idea and it really became something. And certainly, Ania, what I got from that is that if you have an idea and you have the will and the tenacity, and believe you me, Patricia has both, she's quite formidable in a really lovely way, then you can really do so much. And it was really encouraging. And many of us, surely, Ania, you must have a novel in you. We've all got that novel we're going to write one day.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe. I won't hold you to it.
No, please don't. Not with my dyslexia.
Okay.
It could be quite an interesting read.
Oh, but just get an AI to do it for you.
True.
Fine.
True.
All right. So let us know your suggestions. We just gave a few there just to jog your memory, but you, of course, will have your own thoughts, listeners, about what you'd like to suggest. So you know our socials pretty well by now. Our email address is hello@somewhereonearth.co. And on WhatsApp, we are code 44 7486 329 484. And I know I keep banging on about it, but please, you make us feel loved. This time of year, everyone wants to feel loved and appreciated, so we'd really like your suggestions. And you get a shout out on your favourite podcast. That can't be bad, can it? So just a quick shout out for the Evergreen Network. We're now part of that gang, and you can check out their website, evergreenpodcast.com. And audio production, experting, and just about everything has been done by Ania today. Our production manager is Liz Tuohy, and I'm just doing little talky bits in between, really, but having fun along the way. I'm Gareth, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael Calore, Director of Consumer Tech and Culture at Wired, here with my colleagues, senior writer Lauren Good.
Hello.
And Wired contributor Zoe Schiffer.
Hey, everyone.
We're here to tell you about our new podcast, Uncanny Valley, a show about the people, power, and influence of Silicon Valley.
Every week, we get together to talk about how technology and culture from the Valley is influencing our everyday lives.
We dig into questions like, will we ever get our privacy back? Is OpenAI for real? And how are Silicon Valley billionaires impacting U.S. elections?
The first episode of Uncanny Valley comes out on October 31st. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.